Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. Today is July 21st, the self imposed deadline by Prime Minister Mark Carney on when he was going to try and get a trade deal signed with the United States. I really don't think we are actually going to see a trade deal today. I guess it could always happen, but usually when something that major is going to be announced, you hear from some legacy media outlet that it's likely to come today because obviously the media wants clicks on their articles. So leaking the fact that there's a rumor that the deal is going to be signed today would be something that they would be publishing. Now, I think the real trade deadline is going to be the one that President Donald Trump set out, which is August 1st, when he plans to put a 35% tariff on Canada unless we make some major concessions in order to avoid that. I don't think that Mark Carney is going to be willing to modify or get rid of the supply management system. So while I also don't think we are going to end up with a 35% tariff on our goods going into the United States, I don't think we are going to have zero tariff with the United States either. And that's why I want to talk about the polling today. Carney is actually not really in the position to be screwing up this bad this early into his prime ministership. People can say he seems like he's acting tough. He's, saying that he will retaliate against the United States if they impose tariffs on us, that he's not going to get rid of the supply management system in order to please Donald Trump. Like, he hasn't exactly vocalized that particular view, but he's been unwilling to budge on it. And in, I guess, the more inside the liberal base, people are going to see that as him being tough. Yeah, you can assume that he's going to get some sort of juice off of the fact that he's going up against Trump and people are in Canada are going to like that. In the medium term, when we have a tariff on us, you're going to have a lot of Canadians who are going to be upset with him, and then they are going to want him to sign a new deal, and the Liberal Party and Carney are going to become more unpopular because of that, because of the economic consequences catching up to people. They'll eventually say, why did Carney do this to us? Even if they may have actually been supporting him being obstinate leading up to this point. And no, I'm not supporting the United States tariffing Canada. It's just the reality that they're tariffing us unless we make a bunch of concessions. Concessions we probably should make for the consumer in Canada, anyways, because the consumer is not helped by supply management. So if we get rid of it immediately, Canadians' cost of living will go down. And then also, we will actually have more competition in the agricultural sector across the country. Alberta has 12% of the population in Canada, but it was only allowed to provide 7% of dairy and chicken in the country. We only get 7% of the quota in a province of 12% of the population. It's a stupid system. It should go away. But now let's look at some of the polling because, again, it shows that right now Carney's kind of on the edge. If he starts screwing up really bad, you could have him go from very popular to very unpopular quite quickly. Because actually, compared to Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau a couple months into their prime ministerships, he's actually not nearly as popular as those two. Those two had approvals in the mid 60s when they first entered office. I think Trudeau actually had an approval of like 72% shortly after entering office in 2015. Naturally, there's that honeymoon period. People want to think nice things about the new guy. But Carney has only ever really had an approval rating of like 56%. His disapproval rating isn't that high because I think there's a lot of undecided people who are giving him a chance, but he doesn't have a lot of room to screw up until he's just another liberal prime minister that nobody likes. So first, let's look at direction of the country and world. Really, what I want to look at is the January polling up until now. Naturally, direction of the country, a lot of people were not rating it very well. 19% at one point in December, 23% in January were saying that the country is going in the right direction, and now it's 36%. But you will notice that that is down from the 40% the previous week, and at one point it was also 38. So I think it probably, if we don't get a trade deal signed, is going to settle out either very low 30s or it's going to fall below 30, in which we're kind of back in a situation where this feels like when Justin Trudeau was prime minister again. But now let's jump down to some other polling about Mark Carney's approval, as well as the actual polling between the parties. So right now, Mark Carney's approval rating is actually doing quite well. Abacus puts him a little bit lower than many of the other pollsters. He has a net favorability of 21% right now, with 49% approving and 28% disapproving. But again, that's not exactly the greatest rating ever, considering this is his honeymoon polling. If you look at Stephen Harper, if you look at Justin Trudeau in Abacus data ratings, this is about how popular Trudeau was during COVID. At the start, where people were very reliant on the government, this is how popular he was at that time. When he first entered office, he was in the 60s. And this demonstrates a lot of people just don't really know what to think about Carney right now. So even now, his approval rating is not even above 50%. And again, trade deal doesn't get signed. What happens if he starts dropping into the low 40s and his disapproval rating is now in the mid 30s? Again, we're kind of just in a Paul Martin situation where it's the guy who took over for the last guy and he isn't exactly lightning in the bottle like they promised. Okay, let's get down to a different result. Let's go to actually Pierre Poilievre, who, by the way, despite the sustained media attacks on him recently, is actually not doing that bad. A net favorability of -4 is not that bad for a conservative. When you have the media against you, when the general kind of culture of Canada is that conservatives are very American and for some reason we hate Americans, -4 is perfectly fine. If you looked at Aaron O'Toole's polling, if you looked at Andrew Scheer's polling, it was more like -12. It was like -8, -15. -4 is fine. 38% approval, 42% disapproval. And again, I'm going to keep repeating it. If Carney can't sign a deal or we end up with like a 15% tariff and people are like, didn't you promise you were going to solve this issue? You could see a lot of the stuff reversing. People remembering, hey, this is why I actually liked Poilievre at one point because he was going to fix these things. And then Carney's is going to kind of reverse with him. His disapproval is going to spike, approval falling, and then Pierre Poilievre is going to benefit from a lot of that reversal. A lot of people who are saying, give the Liberals a chance, end up swinging back over and say, yeah, never mind, bring the Conservatives in, please. So now going down a little bit further here, I want to show you the polling between the Conservatives and the Liberals. It's actually not going too bad for the Conservatives right now. Obviously, they are behind. We are in a honeymoon period for the Liberal Party. But this is not exactly what most parties experience after winning re-election. And this isn't a quirk of Abacus data where they tend to be always really tight between the Liberals and Conservatives. You can see back in the day, back last year, the Conservatives were absolutely clobbering the Liberals when Justin Trudeau was the leader. And typically in Abacus polling, after the Liberals won re-election in 2021, after the Liberals won re-election in 2019, in 2015, they were soaring right after the election because it actually is a phenomenon that after the party in power wins re-election or they first get elected, a lot of people who actually voted the other way start saying that they like these guys in. Part of it's because you want to pretend you were on the winning team. And also part of it is saying, well, they won fair and square. So if an election happened right this second, I would say vote for the guys who just won because they deserve to have their time in office. That's not happening for the Liberals right now. It's actually very tight, with the Liberals only leading the Conservatives 43% to 40%, which is effectively in the margin of error. The margin of error on a poll like this is going to be 2.5%. And the 40 and 43 are probably subject to being rounded up and down. And so, again, if Mark Carney, I'm going to keep repeating it, does not sign a trade deal, he is not going to be doing very hot in the polls quite soon. I know people can point to Nanos, they can point to other pollsters where the Liberals are doing far better, but I just take those with a grain of salt. When I see a poll rollout that says the Liberals are currently leading by 13 points, no, I just really don't see it. Nanos is one of these ones. Angus Reid are one of those pollsters that during the election were showing the Liberals up like 7-8 points, 6-7 points before the election. And then it ended up being like 1.5 points the Liberals won the popular vote by. And so, yeah, I don't really see that as being accurate when a pollster that previously showed that they were going to win by 6 points, which would be a big majority for the Liberals, are now showing they're going to be leading by 13 points. I think it's just response bias that are happening with those pollsters. Abacus showed like a slight Liberal lead before Election Day in their normal poll, and then they ended up doing a little bit better than Abacus said. But that was far closer than what a lot of the other pollsters were showing, which was going to be a blowout for the Liberals of a win of 6 to 9 points. So I tend to trust the ones that were more coherent, I guess, when it came to the difference between the polling and the actual election result. But anyways, that should be it for this video, guys. I just want to do a short one of just kind of setting up the table for what could happen, for what things currently look like in a situation where it doesn't look like Mark Carney is going to be getting a good trade deal. He wasn't doing that good before we weren't getting a trade deal. Let's see how things are going to evolve after. Of course, if you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet a subscriber, and leave a comment on what you think is going to happen with the trade deal and Mark Carney's approval. See you guys later.